A tea, but I get Yorkshire tea now. I can get that off Lazada, so it's kind of is okay. But I have to make it with bottled water. If you use the tap water, it's too hard water, right?
Shall we start?
Sure.
Yes, welcome everybody. As you can see, we set up a lot of chairs because only on Meetup we got 37 people coming. I don't count 37 yet, maybe the rate we never can tell, but we have more seats for people still coming. I guess one reason why a lot of people wanted to come is because tonight is going to be the last night that Phra Pandit is teaching us for this year. Next year it's another story. So we are looking forward to Phra Pandit. Of course, you're very welcome here. Thank you very much for being here. And over to you.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody completely new to meditation? Okay, so you all have a reasonable foundation. We will sit together for about 25 minutes or so, and then I'll give the talk, some questions, and then we will definitely be done by 8 o'clock. Sacrosanct end time is the plan. Hey. So if you're ready, please settle yourself into a comfortable posture. So feel free to use the meditation system you are accustomed to. Whatever system you use, note that most meditation systems rely on focusing on an object. This ability to tie your attention to a meditation object is the heart of getting started in meditation. Be patient. You have trained your mind since you were young to always look for some stimulus, some thoughts, some entertainment. Tying yourself down to a neutral meditation object will always be tricky, will always require patience. Always start meditation from where your mind is at. Are you bright or dull? Is the mind agitated, soft, sleepy, doubtful, restless? A good vipassana meditator, insight meditator, should know how your mind is at the present moment. This is real, it's not philosophy, it's not prayer, it's not imagination. Note that the mind jumps from one thing to another thing. If you can, you feel the lure of the attraction. As thoughts arise, try to get your attention. Your mind wants you to think about food this evening, friends tomorrow, places to visit, things to do. but only one idea at a time arises. Try to feel the lure or attraction as the thought comes up. Think about me, think about me. This is really important. Try to hold that thought without losing your mindfulness. Ride the thought out. Feel it as it ceases. This will give you such empowerment over your thinking. The mind tells you that it's you, but the meditator sees the mind as not yourself. Sees thoughts coming up, disappearing, calling for attention, steering your moods, guiding your consciousness. Thoughts are a terrible master. So in meditation, feel the thought arise. Ride the thought out to the end without losing mindfulness. You start to feel the unreality of thinking. As you watch thoughts rise and cease, they will appear as not yourself. They will appear as something that comes to disturb you, something that will vanish if you don't give it attention. For the final few minutes of the meditation, turn your attention to the idea, to the thought and the feeling of gratitude. That is, we all have much to be grateful for. One who is grateful is one who is happy. This is listed as a beautiful state of mind, sobana citta, beautiful mind state. You may call to mind things for which you are grateful, people, even pets, food, anything you like. Grateful for a safe society, freedom from war, freedom from natural disasters. We live in an extraordinarily privileged time and place. If you can cultivate the sense of gratitude, you will also always feel like you have enough. So call to mind those things that you can be grateful for. Deliberately calling into mind, calling into place this beautiful mind state. All mind states will occur more frequently if you give them clear, conscious attention. If you call them into being, if you welcome them, nourish them and maintain them, those mind states will occur more frequently. And yet we spend our time on social media or complaining about things, dwelling on the negative. If you wish to have a beautiful mind, you must practice clearly, consciously, deliberately these beautiful mind states. So just for the last few minutes of the meditation, try to arouse this feeling of gratitude, of appreciation. Sabbe buddha balapata pache kanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhatso sabba buddha nubawe nat satta soti bhavantu te sabbe buddha balapata pache kanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhatso Sabba dhamma nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te Sabbhe buddha balapata pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakhang bandami sabbhaso Sabba sangha nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te. So relax your posture. Okay. Thank you all for coming out on a rainy day. We have that aspiration for perfect, complete and total liberation from all suffering. But many people don't want to do that if it's raining. Yeah. So, this evening's topic, not everything is a thing. which I think is a very zingy title. I was quite pleased when I came up with that. But it does have a very specific and particular meaning. The practice of Buddhism is a practice. It is a form of the mystic tradition, that is, of various religions and cultures around the world. There is this teaching that there is a enlightenment or a higher good or summum bonum or moksha or liberation or awakening, many different words that point to a direct spiritual awakening that lies beyond words, beyond stories, beyond thoughts and opinions. This is quite important because many people get stuck on the words and the stories. This is how the world was created. This is how heavens and hells are. This is what happens when you die. These are all stories, and you may believe them, you may buy into them, you may post them up on Facebook, but they're still thoughts and stories. Some stories will be more correct than others. Some thoughts will be more beneficial than others. But what you have attained to in this case is still just another set of stories, another set of beliefs. The idea of liberation, enlightenment, awakening, this is that there is a direct spiritual awakening, liberation that can occur, independent to all the thoughts and stories and feelings of the mind. Every culture around the world in every age has had saints and sages and hermits who have gone out of the town, out of the village, and gone to seek or to try to find this liberation, this awakening. Not just Buddhism, but each tradition then has a certain set of teachings or guidelines in order to guide you to that same experience again. This is quite fundamental to Buddhism, that the awakening experience, the ultimate awakening, is accessible to all. It doesn't matter on your creed or your background or which group you belong to. It doesn't matter which hat you buy, with which logos, which groups you're a member of, that all human beings have access to this path and have access to this liberation if you apply attention, if you apply your mind in the right way. Do animals have the capacity for liberation? I don't know. In Zen they had this story of, can a dog be enlightened? And the answer was moo, which isn't the sound of a cow. It means something like not answering. Ramana Maharshi, the Indian sage, had an enlightened cow. Apparently. I think it was enlightened on the moment that it died, because it made such good merit by being around Ramana Maharshi. This was the sage in southern India, Tiruchirappalli. I went to his ashram, I went to the place. He was just a fairly simple guy, but they built a whole center around him. He was quite a simple guy, and as he got older and more sick, his disciples made this rule that nobody was to disturb him after lunch. So they hung a sign outside the sala, nobody can go in after lunch. So after his lunch he came to the sala and he saw this sign and thought, oh well, I can't go in. So he sat outside and received all the visitors. You all know, you've heard of Ramana Maharshi? Okay, he's worth looking up. His teachings are beautifully simple and very poignant. So this teaching of finding liberation is ubiquitous. It is within the human nature. I don't know about animals, I can't answer that question. But it is within human nature, and to everybody who wants to take a look can start to open up this path. How far down the path you get to liberation depends on you, your effort, your karma. Some people have natural advantages. I think being English is an advantage. Dharma is based on Four Noble Truths, suffering and the end of suffering. Well, English people, we like misery. We like suffering. I think we're more familiar with it than most people. Maybe you need the right parents. I've often thought about that. Maybe you need the right genes, genetic makeup. A lot of things depend on your genes. So how do we know who gets how far down the path? According to Buddhism, it depends on your karma, but that can mean pretty much anything. So it doesn't really answer the question either. But this will arise due to your own effort and your own inspiration. The Buddha said, there are gods and humans, when they hear about putting an end to suffering, their hearts do not respond. So this is true for many people, simply have no interest, have had no inspiration, have had no turning point where this path has started to open up. Those people who have got started on the path, usually it has come through either extreme suffering or a moment of extreme quiet. Inevitably, it starts to open up at that time when your mind, the agent, the ego, has stopped. It comes in moments of silence. It comes in the gap between the thoughts. It doesn't come from hearing a story and getting inspired by the story. You know that smarmy Englishman, Richard Dawkins, the biologist, right? So his criticism of Buddhism, he said, in Buddhism, the Buddha was conceived, his mother conceived the baby Buddha by a white elephant entering into her womb. And then he said to some Buddhists, do you really believe that? Well, the story isn't it. Nobody gets onto the path because of the story. The reason for that story, by the way, is it can be painted. And a lot of Buddhism was transmitted by art. And the art was always commissioned by the royalty. And when you're painting these murals for the royalty, and you're painting the conception of the Buddha, you don't really want to paint the king and queen, you know, behind the palace. You want to paint something a bit more austere and beautiful. So you have a white elephant. It's not complicated. It just symbolizes this moment where the planet Earth will get this great teacher. So the stories are not it, but this moment where the consciousness opens up, this comes in the silence. I remember in the Old Testament it said God speaks to you in the rustling of the reeds. He would also speak from a cleft in the rock or from a burning bush. I never figured out the burning bush bit. I think it means the burning of the senses, the suffering condition of the human being. And when you know the suffering, the mind stops. When the mind stops, this divine starts to arise. In Buddhism, we do this through practice. We engage in a practice. But to get started on this path is going to require stopping the mind. This is quite important because a lot of Vipassana schools these days say, allow the mind to be as it is, allow thoughts to come and go. I allowed thoughts to come and go in my mind for 25 years, and I can tell you it did not do me any good whatsoever. My thoughts are atrocious. I have some horrible opinions. I believe some crazy things. I was arguing with someone about the moon landings the other day, whether do you believe the moon landings were real? My argument was, of course the moon landings were real, but I think a lot of the photos were faked. So some of the arguments about the photos, the way the flag seems to be waving in the wind, but there's no wind on the moon, and things like this. I think they went to the moon and they came back and they had nothing to show for it except a very grainy little video of one step for mankind. And so I think they faked a lot of the photos. What do you think of my theory? Is this a good theory? Is this a good idea? Thinking isn't it, and don't allow thoughts to be there. This is the wrong teaching, that just allow thoughts to drift through the mind. Thoughts meander through my open mind like a letterbox. So how does it go? Joe, you're the man. Thoughts meander through the mind. The Beatles song. Across the universe. They were singing about meditation, because it was while they were with, what's his name? Maharishi. Now I'm just trying to remember what that stupid song was. Across the universe, look it up. This was the Beatles song and how they described experiencing the mind in meditation. Well, yes, thoughts do meander through the mind, but this is something that will distract you from the proper meditation. Come, you're not too late. There's some seats at the front. Is it going to be more comfortable? Honestly, we're not all looking at you wondering who is this that came late. So, to get embarked on this path has some prerequisites. You have to up your morality. You have to purify the mind or refine the character. The Buddha said many times, monks, I expect you to be one of refined character, not one of coarse character. So we take precepts to try and improve our character. We undertake not to kill, because killing requires a mind that is shut off. One that is compassionate and free and open is one that is kind and gentle to other beings. We don't steal. We refrain from stealing and taking what is not given. We refrain from sexual misconduct. Refrain from wrong or harsh speech, including vulgar speech. I have trouble with that one because I'm a terrible swearer. And especially when things annoy me and things are frustrating. Big things I'm all right with, governments and wars and things like that. I can have metta for, but like a telephone that doesn't work, that will elicit harsh speech from me. Become one who is of refined behavior. You can see for yourself amongst people who you know, those people who are of coarse behavior, who drink a lot, take drugs, constantly out partying, doing things of argumentative. These people, if you bring them into a room like this and say, sit down, be quiet, look at your mind, they can't do it. If you are of coarse or unrefined behavior, to settle the mind is going to be more difficult. You can see this just in the people that you know. So a prerequisite is that we are one who is willing to refine behavior. If you're going to stop the mind, if you're going to go into these empty spaces, you must be one who has at least a basis of good behavior. That's a prerequisite. Also, the Buddha said you should be one who is content with little. In terms of monks, we have 4 requisites. We chant this every day in monasteries. So you are content with just rag robes. These days we get new ones, but it's supposed to be rag ones. Content with the robes just to ward off heat and cold and flies and keep us warm when we need to be kept warm. Be content with what dwelling that you have. surprisingly little that you need to have a comfortable dwelling, especially if your mind is comfortable. Then wherever you go, you feel comfortable. If your mind is agitated, wherever you go is agitating and not good enough. I was with one monk friend of mine, and we were in a retreat center, but his mother came to visit him, and she stayed in this big fancy hotel, and we're in this crummy little retreat center. Anyway, so we went to meet her. She was taking us out for lunch, and she complained bitterly that in her hotel room she can hear the pipe work for the bathroom next door to her room. She said, "Oh, it was dreadful. It kept me up all night." I'm wondering, who is in the hotel room running the water in the bathroom all night? I think you only use the bathroom a couple of times. How many times did she really hear? And how loud was it really? But she had no contentment in her mind. She's unable to be content with her surroundings. We found it rather funny, but be content with the food that you eat. For monks, we are supposed to just get our arms round, our arms food, and be content with medicine. So whatever medicines we have. Listed in the sutras is fermented urine as a medicine. So we don't use that one so much. And I would be a little discontent if I had to rely on fermented urine for my medicine. But that's what it says in the sutras, so we can acknowledge that. Being one who is content with little is a really beautiful practice. For myself, I've actually had very little, but I've always had far more than I need, my whole life. But one reason for that is I don't need to buy things to make me happy. I don't need a new thing in order to feel content. In fact, I tend to feel discontent when I have to get new things. How many of you update your phone every year, every 2 years? One friend of mine, some of you know her, Nui, hope she isn't watching. She got a new iPhone because the iPhone 17 has a better camera than the iPhone 15 that she has. I'm like, why? And then all the passwords are in her old iPhone and she can't remember it, so she had to start new Facebook accounts and everything. Be content with little. Be content with what you have. This is not something that happens accidentally. It's a practice that you undertake. It's a deliberate undertaking to look for contentment within yourself and not within your surroundings. If you look within your surroundings, you'll always be discontent. Things will never be quite good enough. There are limits. Thinking of telling you a few stories about some dreadful places that I've had to stay in. Buddhist monasteries can be quite diabolical. So taking precepts, be content with little, be content with what you have. Then you get onto the practices that aim towards this liberation, having set the foundation, necessary foundation. The Buddha gave this analogy. He said it's like a wheel. If you were to roll the wheel down the road, if the wheel is perfectly made, as the wheel stops rolling, it would stop perfectly balanced. But a badly made wheel, if you were to roll it down the road, it would wobble left, right, and then fall over. He said, in the same way, one who is of refined behavior, who is content with little, is somebody like a well-made wheel. When the mind stops, it will stop in equipoise. But if you are one of coarse behavior, when you stop the mind will fall over. It will not allow you to go into that space. Then there's the guarding of what the Buddha called the guarding of the sense doors. This means that, in the words of the sutta, when the eye sees a form, and eye consciousness on that form arises, you do not get caught in the signs and features of that form, or unwholesome states will invade the mind. He holds himself in restraint as regards the eye. When the nose and smells occur, smelling consciousness arises on that object. One does not get caught or involved in the signs and features of that smell, lest unwholesome states should invade the mind. He holds himself in restraint with regards to the nose sense, and so on for the ear sense, the taste sense, body sense, and also the mind sense. So when thoughts and ideas occur to the mind, you do not get involved in the signs and features of that thought, or unwholesome states will invade the mind. He holds himself in restraint with regards to the mind sense. So what this means is, if you look directly at consciousness, having put aside all the stories and all the thoughts and ideas and clever opinions that you have, if you look directly at consciousness, what is actually happening, not what you think is happening or what you want to happen, what's actually happening when you look, the mind will leap to one thing, will think about or consider or feel that one particular thing. A few moments later, the conscious attention will leap to another thing. So as you sit here right now, you look at me, you listen to me, but a thought occurs to you, what time is it? Now your attention has gone to your watch or your phone. Now your attention is on the phone. What time is it? What time am I having dinner? What time does the restaurant close? Your attention has gone to that thing. That now is filling your conscious awareness. A moment later, having done that, your attention comes back to me, and then you think, I don't know, you see something behind me, like, what's this fan doing? Now your attention has gone to the fan. Then you shuffle because your back aches. Your attention has gone to your back. If you look carefully, conscious attention will move from one thing to one thing to one thing, constantly. This isn't a matter of opinion or a matter of religion. It's a matter of observation. When your attention is on one thing, it can't be on another thing. There was a story about his name is Carbine Williams. He's the man who invented the gun, because, of course, come to a Buddhist talk, we'll tell you about guns. Previously, to load a gun, you would fire a gun, you would open the chamber, pop out the bullet, and then you put in the next bullet, close the chamber, and then fire your gun. So this guy in America, of course, sorry for Americans, he was put in prison for some reason or other, and while he was in prison, they put him into the sweat box. So this box out in the courtyard that would just get filled in the sun and would bake the person. And when he went into this sweat box, they leave them in there for a few days or whatever, I don't know. It's harsh punishment. And while he was in there, he thought, well, I can't think of two things at once, so I'll think about rifles. So he was in there for a few days, and then he came out of the box and excitedly went and told his prison masters. He said, I figured out how to make a rifle reload itself. And this was I think it was the carbine. I don't know about guns because I'm not American. In Europe, we don't have guns. And it was when you fire the gun, the action of the bullet can pop the bullet and load the next bullet in place. And so he got this idea while he was in this sweat box. But the thing that struck me was, he said he can't think of two things at once. So while he's in there, he can either think about how unpleasant it is to be in this unpleasant situation, but if he puts his attention onto these rifles, he's not feeling the suffering. Your mind can't be in two different places at once. It's a strange thing. You can only think of one thing at a time. Now this is a little counterintuitive because it feels like you can be aware of many things. But what we're doing is we use stories to try and carve out of experience ways that we can get a handle on this what is actually an effervescent consciousness that's constantly leaping around. We use stories to try and tie it together. If you want to know more about stories, I can tell you more and how that system works, or how we focus on only one thing at a time. In philosophy, this was called phenomenology, made famous, of course, by the Muppets song. You know that one? Phenomenon, do 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 do. Okay. Some of you are looking at me like I'm crazy, but one or two people actually know the Muppets song. Huh? So look it up, the Muppet song. It's really good. Phenomenology means, it actually came from Edward Husserl, but before him, I've forgotten his name now. And he said that what's important is what is actually experienced. At the time, philosophers and psychologists were trying to make these imaginative descriptions of the mind. And he said, these descriptions of the mind don't matter. What matters is what is actually experienced. That's what's real. So if you see a piece of rope on the ground and you think it's a snake, a materialist would say the truth is it's a piece of rope. A phenomenologist would say the truth is it's a snake, because I interact with it as if it's a snake. I jump up into the air. So the entirety of my reality is based around it being a snake. Only when I realize that it's not a snake does then the reality change. Am I going too far down a rabbit hole here? In psychology, this was called Gestalt. And what it means is that the mind will create one object out of what is experienced. The original experiments were done by Wertheimer. And this was in the early days of TV, when they were just figuring out how to make TV. And if you have a series of lights, and you light a light up, turn it off, the next light, turn it off, the next light, what you'll see is one object moving, right? You can figure that out. So he did these experiments. Well, what happens if you jump it backwards and forwards? At what point does it become flashing lights? At what point does it appear as one light? So he was doing all these experiments, which basically would show that the mind will make a single object to focus on at a time. This object that has come up, we call in technical Buddhist language the object of consciousness. Right now you can look at this Buddha image, you can listen to the sound of the air conditioner, you can feel the temperature of the room, you can think about what you're going to eat this evening. Your mind can jump around, right? But you can't hold two things in the mind at once. If you try, feels like you can for a second, but then you have to start switching very quickly between the two things. This mechanism of consciousness, of seeing one thing at a time, that thing that has just arisen is described in Buddhism as having three properties, three important properties, which can be observed and directly proven by yourself. Firstly, that thing is impermanent, because it just arose and it's just about to cease. Impermanence does not mean all things are impermanent, because some things are not impermanent. Taxation systems are not impermanent. Thai visa applications, these are everlasting. They don't cease. They will never cease for as long as you exist. You will always have paperwork to do. The law of karma, the law of dharma, rebirth, the universe expanding and contracting. There are lots of things that are not necessarily impermanent. Or if they are or not, how do you prove it? Who knows? And who cares? What we're interested in is that thing that has just come into your consciousness, that is now filling your consciousness. That thing has just arisen and will just about to cease. Now, this is not the normal way of thinking about things. If you think about your house or your apartment, you necessarily have to consider it as being permanently there. You can't think my house has just arisen and now it's disappeared. And yet, that's what we're asking you to do in meditation. Whether the house is permanently existing or not is irrelevant. What's relevant is you have just called this into your mind, and it's about to vanish from your mind. That is what was meant by impermanence. If you pay attention to the impermanence of things, it undermines your belief or your understanding of things being permanently existing. It creates a sense of disillusionment or detachment from things, because you realize that things aren't things. They're just something I've called into consciousness. So you're encouraged in Buddhist practice to start to view your actual experience as things that have just come up into attention and just disappearing from attention. I did this some years ago. A crazy doctor told me I was dying, which I wasn't, and I didn't have. He said I had lymphoma, which I didn't have. But for a while I thought I was dying. It was an interesting experience. And I noticed this then. I'd have this panic arise, because I was only 35. I'm 56 now. I'm kind of, it's a bit... I'm running to the end of the conveyor belt. I can kind of understand it a bit better. But at the time, as soon as my mind touches this thing, I'm going to die, the panic would start to come up. And then I would think about something else and the panic would disappear. I find it really interesting. It really arises when I put attention onto it. As a meditator, you are interested in what your attention is going on to and your reactions to that. The second property of that thing that has just come into your attentive consciousness, second property is it's suffering. And it's suffering in terms of it's agitated, it's not stationary, it's constantly changing, and it's agitating you because anything that you put your attention on, you will automatically have liking and disliking for that thing. My favorite example is always Donald Trump. Think about Donald Trump, you love him, you want to make America great again, you hate him, he's the end of democracy. Whatever it is, you call that into attention 10 seconds ago, you weren't worried about Donald Trump or democracy or making America great again. It wasn't anywhere in your mind, in your consciousness. You've just called that into mind, and now you get that reaction, that snowball reaction. Everything that you bring into consciousness has that snowball reaction of liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting. Now there are some neutral objects. What can you think of neutral? The most neutral thing for me is football, because I think nothing about football. If you mention football, my mind is just dead. It's just no reaction. I don't hate it, I don't like it, I don't care about nothing. It's just a complete zilch to me. Nada, zero. There was a thing about doctors giving placebo pills to patients, and if they give 2 placebo pills, they work better than 1 placebo pill. If you give red placebo pills, it works better at energizing someone, but if you give blue placebo pills, it works better at calming someone down or pain relief. Unless you're Italian and male. And the thought was that the Italian football team wears blue, so when they get blue placebo pills, it excites them. That was the... Is that true? So, what you put your attention onto will automatically, unless it's completely neutral, and nobody spends time putting attention onto completely neutral things. You think about things that you like or you dislike. It's very unusual to have somebody, you do occasionally find somebody, like I met this guy once, he just played computer games, and then I went into his house and sat alone, and he was like, and somehow he was still playing. And then I thought, his mind's just like, just nothing. Men are quite good at this, actually. We're quite good at just sitting and having nothing in our minds. Do you ever see... Yeah. You spend all of your time on what you like and dislike. When you put your attention onto something, your mind gets into this immediate reaction. That's what was meant by suffering. Not there is wars and famine and unpleasant things happening in the world. Sure, that's true and it's dreadful, but that's not the dukkha that the Buddha talked about. He was talking about the shaking or the agitation in the mind when you put your attention onto something. This shaking, this instability, that's dukkha. That's what he described as dukkha. Third property of that thing that you call into conscious attention is it is not yourself. This is not a teaching that there is no self. In the Pali language, that would be nattata. The Buddha never said that. What he said was, the sensory impact, the sensory contact that you have at this moment of that thing that you are looking at, that's not you. You don't think, if you look at this Buddha image, this is just arising in your attention, and the moment it's going to disappear. You don't think, I have arisen and I have disappeared. So whatever object you can bring into consciousness, that's not you. And it's to be viewed as not you. It's to be viewed as something come up and disappear, including ideas about yourself. So this is why I said not everything is a thing. There's a mistake in Buddhist teaching, certainly in English, that says all things are impermanent. But what's a thing? A thing is that thing that just came into consciousness and is going. It doesn't refer to all things in the universe or the world. We're not concerned with those. All things are suffering. Doesn't mean that Marmite is suffering. Marmite is not suffering, unless you're American. Americans don't like Marmite. Doesn't mean all things in the world are suffering. It means when you put your attention onto something, that thing has come up into consciousness and you're having the reaction of liking and disliking that thing. That's the suffering that was talked about. All things are non-self means even ideas about yourself is just an idea that just arose. It's just about to cease. It's not you. That was what was meant by, in the original, is not things are impermanent. It is sensory impact. Whatever has just come into your consciousness, that's not permanent. That's suffering and it's not you. So the law of karma, for example, is not impermanent because it's not a thing. The thought of the law of karma, I pull into my conscious attention, now I'm thinking about karma. That thought is impermanent. But the law of karma isn't impermanent. Same for Thai visa applications. Is permanent. It will go on for the rest of your life. But the thought of it has just come into your mind and is just about to disappear. So why do we practice in this way? Is that clear, right? Not all things are impermanent, all things are non-self. Means what that thing that you just called into conscious attention, that's what these three properties apply to. So when you hear them say Buddhism is about non-self, it's not true. And in fact, as you get into the attainments, the sense of self should intensify. And this is important because there are some states of meditation where you sit, you meditate, you watch your breath, everything goes quiet, you're accustomed to the posture, and then the mind kind of and you get bing, and you sit for a while, and then the bell goes, and you're like, oh, I feel peaceful. Must be meditation. No, you were sleeping. And that is peaceful. And you let go of stuff. And you were willing to enter into a quiet space of the mind. It's a good progress. It's a good thing to do, but it's still not real meditation yet. As you go into the proper meditation, the sense of self should intensify to a massive degree. The sense of sheer presence and wakefulness should intensify to a huge degree. In fact, so much energy and power pumps from it, you swear that you could like zap things or move things with your mind or something. It feels like so much, but you can't. Don't ask me to move things. I can try. Feels like you can, right? Feels like you can. There's reasons for that, but we won't go into. So, this process of watching that thing that has come into conscious awareness, you watch this process, the mind goes to this, goes to this, it goes to this, goes to this, it goes to this. You're sitting meditating. Maybe if you're a good meditator, it goes to the breath, and the breath, and the breath, and the breath. Ding, oh, that's an hour gone by. You were sleeping. Then as you wake up, you see again, okay, what time is it now? Where do I go? Lunch, dinner, whatever it is. The mind goes boom, 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 boom. This process of the mind going to objects like this is what has to stop. This is what getting into the deeper states of meditation is. Because after a while, if you view these moments of consciousness as, well, it's not me, it's agitating me, it's just come up, it's just going, you start to separate from this process of the mind. As you separate from this process of the mind, this intensification of the real self, the purified life force, purified consciousness, in technical terms, citta anaramana, the mind that doesn't have an object, starts to manifest itself spontaneously. It's not something you can create, or you can't write about it or think about it to get into it. You can only do it by holding in restraint, restraining the mind from going out to anything. Intensified presence. As this happens, the mind becomes very bright. A piti, a rapture comes through the body. You can feel distinctly this quivering, vibrating presence of intensified self, for want of a better word, or purified consciousness, or citta. Then you can feel what disturbs it. As soon as you start to think about something, dinner, Donald Trump, air conditioning, whatever it is you want to think about, you can feel this dissipation of that energy as the mind goes out to an object. So I want to finish with a very short summary of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism that was given by Lumpur Dun. You can see this in a book which is called Gifts He Left Behind, if you want to look it up. It's a really beautiful book. He's a Thai master, enlightened, we believe, and he would just speak in very short phrases, like 20 or 30 words, and that's it. And he described the whole of Buddhism, or Four Noble Truths, as this: suffering is the mind being outside of itself. The arising of suffering is the mind going outside. Cessation of suffering is the mind being with itself. The path to the end of suffering is bringing the mind back to itself. Very beautiful summary of all Buddhism. Makes clear the point. This process of the mind going out to objects is the problem. Holding the mind in restraint is the practice that we get into. This experience then is not a thing. It's not it's an experience. You start to experience it in a vibrant, powerful way. But it's not the mind going to some object, some thought, some sound, some smell, some taste. This only comes in silence. Starts to reveal itself in silence. For most people who have got somehow involved in the spiritual path, there's been an awakening moment. And if you think back, that moment, some people have had it on drugs, apparently. I've never taken a drug in my life. Do you believe me? I actually haven't. Aside from alcohol, I guess I had, before I was a monk. And maybe coffee. That's about the only drugs I've ever had. So I don't know about that. Sometimes through extreme suffering, when the mind just has nowhere left to go, suddenly there's an awakening experience. Sometimes just being on a beach, looking up at the stars, suddenly the mind goes quiet. It's in this quietude that this path starts to reveal itself. You're starting to get a glimpse of purified consciousness. But once having got that taste, whatever that thing was that got you started, you are unfortunately going to have to practice in order to make it real. I used to have this as a child. I could enter into these jhana experiences. I'd always look at the corner of a building that was quite blank, and then I'd go into it. And then I was around 11 or 12, and I told people about this experience, but nobody had any idea what I was talking about. So I had no way to conceptualize it. I was 11 or 12, and I went into this experience where I tried, and there was too much thinking, and the thought occurred to me, I'm getting older now. I have too many thoughts in my head. I distinctly remember that. And that was it. That was the end of my meditation until 40 years later, when through many years as a monk and training and practice, I could start to get back to this original thing. The Buddha had the same, right? If you know the story of the Buddha, he had this experience at 6 years old, watching his father in the ploughing ceremony, which is in December. They still have this ploughing ceremony thing done in Thailand. I can't remember what month it is. To commemorate this, and the Buddha had this experience watching his father in this ploughing ceremony. And then he became a young man, he got married, he went off, learned a bunch of things, and archery and war and Vedas, and then he became a monk and he learned all these practices and jhanas, meditations, but eventually, on the night of enlightenment, he went back to this experience he had when he was 6. So I'm suggesting to you, if you've come here today, you have had some opening in the mind, has opened up, that has tickled your interest. And once that's caught into your consciousness, one way or another, you're going to keep coming back to this path until you've learned to put in the effort and make the attainment. I'm going to stop there. If you have any comments. So there are many different traditions, but the point is there is only one door. And as you get into the mystic traditions, it starts to become obvious that this one door exists. So things like Saint Teresa of Avila, a Christian mystic from the 1600s, I think, late 1500s. She was talking about the same thing, but she would talk about it in Christian terms. Even within the Buddhist tradition, there are different terms and terminologies and ways to do it, but there is only this one door. And however you think about it, call it Christ consciousness, call it moksha, call it liberation, becomes irrelevant because you have to get beyond thinking. You have to get past the methods. So a lot of meditation methods will teach, visualize this, or count the breaths, or scan the body, all of these things, but all you're doing is replacing the normal objects of consciousness with a specific object of consciousness. You're still in that same trap of the mind always going out to something. So a real enlightenment tradition will somehow give you that key to step out of this process altogether. And then you're on the path. Then you will use whatever you have to hand. There's one book by a woman called Bernadette Roberts. Has anyone read this? The Experience of No Self. She was a Carmelite Christian nun for I think 10 years, and then gave it up and left and became married and was looking after her husband and children, and suddenly started to get all of these experiences. If you know Buddhism and you read a book, you recognize so many of her experiences. Started to spontaneously arise for her because she's clearly a meditator. So yes, you don't need to... and she was doing this just using what she could remember from the Carmelite, which is a meditative side of Christianity. So once you get into it, you will find around you, you'll find the tools that you need. But if you just stay on an intellectual level, then you're comparing this tradition to that tradition, to what this guy said, and then it gets very complicated. I met this young man, he was only like 20, but he's very thoughtful, and he asked some funny questions, and he kept coming to our meditation sessions, and then I had a chance to catch up with him. He's actually a musician, but he would fall into these experiences, or the mind would stop, and then he would walk around in kind of like this highly energized but peaceful state. And he could see auras, started to see auras from this state. I was really jealous because I've been a monk for 30 years and I can't see auras. I think if anybody around here is going to see auras, mate, it's going to be me. And so I thought, I really want to know about auras. So I did the one thing that you have to do if you want to learn something new. I looked it up on YouTube, how to see auras, and then I learned you do this thing of looking at your hand by the wall, and then it took a while, but then suddenly this aura snapped into place around my hand. It was quite bizarre. I wasn't sure if I was making it up, but you look on YouTube, but you you hold your hand by a blank surface, and then you allow the eyes to go kind of out of focus, and you concentrate around the fingers. And then there'll be like a sparkly bit of consciousness comes up that's just really about blurriness. And then the aura will snap into place depending on the color of your aura. And my aura is blue. You know what that means? If you have a blue aura, it means you are, with people you meet, you are rapidly able to find a deep empathetic connection. So that's bollocks. But nonetheless, when I saw it, it was blue. When it came out, it was blue. I was like, okay. Some people who see auras have told me my aura is blue with an orange tinge. And no, not this orange. So, yeah, he'd just come across this stuff spontaneously, but then what does he do with it? He still has to get some kind of practice going in order to further it. Otherwise, it kind of slips from your attention. And I meet a lot of people, especially when I talk about some of these refined states of consciousness. Nobody ever brings it up in questions, but they come up to me afterwards and says, I have that. A lot of people do that. And mostly have come across it naturally, but don't know what to do with it, or why it arises, or how to practice with it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I have a question. You said that, like, your conceptions, like mind images of stuff is impermanent and it's not you. But first, what about like your real body parts? And second, what does Buddhism say about like energetic stuff like chakras? Are they you or not?
So the body, whether the body is you or not, the point is that the body will arise and cease in conscious attention. Everything hinges around this process. of conscious attention. So let us say your hand, and you can feel your hand. But when you feel your hand, that's just arisen in conscious attention. Now you're going to say, well, my hand was always there. That's, in psychology, that's called object permanence. And if you don't have object permanence, you can't survive in the world. And you can do this with babies, for example. Have a rattle and it's interested, hide it. When it can't see or hear it, it's gone. But after a while, a baby starts to learn that things still exist, even though you're not experiencing it. And that's why babies like peekaboo, right? Because they get this thing like, now, oh, you've just disappeared, but I know you're still there. And they get interested in that. So do cats. You play with a cat. You play with a cat with a straw and it grabs the straw. But I put the straw behind the newspaper. It goes crazy because it knows that it's there, but it can't see it. So we necessarily operate in the world through object permanence. But when you actually look at the consciousness itself, even the body just arises and ceases in consciousness. I can be aware of my ear. I can be aware of my knee. Today I went to the doctor's and he put this vacuum pump in my ears. Man, I hate that. And he sucked out my ears. So I have to hold myself still, and it's like, oh man, it feels so personal to be touching my ear thing. But that's just come into consciousness because he's touching it. A minute later, I'm thinking about something else. Now that's gone from consciousness. Now, to get by in the world, you have to consider, yes, I have an ear and it's always there. So now I have these eardrops I have to put in twice a day. So to function in the world, you have to work on that premise. But as a meditator, you watch my attention go to my ear, my attention go to this, attention go to this. I do it in the dentist, because while he's doing this on my teeth, I put my attention inside and I can feel the conduit of light coming through the body, and like this. And if my attention is on that, I can't feel what he's doing to my teeth. So that's body. Yes, it does exist for 5, 10, 50 years. But no, if you look, what's actually happening, consciousness arises and ceases just the same. Or conscious attention, it's where attention goes. What was the other part of the question?
Chakras.
Oh yeah, there's no chakras.
What's like,
There were originally three, even in yoga, there were only 3 chakras originally, or 3 energy points. They're called Dantian. All these more chakras, they got invented much later. There's a book called Yoga Body about a guy, he's a yoga fanatic, but he traces the history of all these teachings in yoga, and all this thing about chakras, it came much, much later. Why the top knot? Your astral form or your deva form has a top knot. I don't know, I'll tell you when I find my deva form.
Well, I hope to catch you for a minute afterwards.
Sure, I'll still be here for a while. Yeah.
I think I've been thinking a lot about how much thoughts that are like, that came up because of my habits of being angry or having like, thoughts of someone.
Isn't it-
not like a good person.
Isn't it weird that all the people that look really nice always say I have these angry thoughts?
Oh, you haven't seen me even. And people look nice coming to this type of thing. Anyway, so when I try to follow the point about like how things that comes into attention can only be one at a time, and you can change in how. Well, I have ADHD, so I suffer a lot from taking everything all at once. And when
So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to just give a very short answer. To a meditator, as a normal person, you live in the world and you go to school, you go to work, you look after your family. Hopefully you've ordered your mind in such a way that you function. But as a meditator, when you look at the mind, actually what's happening, it's this thing drop, this thing drop, this thing drop. So then you feel like you're out of control. And many people feel then that, well, I can't meditate. And they miss the fact that you're actually seeing the way the mind actually is and not the way you think it is. So this experience of the mind being out of control is one of the fundamental first steps in meditation. And it's necessary to do that, to see, yes, I'm not in control of the mind is controlling me. And start this process of separating yourself from the thoughts, not believing the thoughts. And you start to get an identity that's separate from all of the thinking. That's necessary to go through. That means you're seeing things as they really are. So it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to end the session. I'm still around if you want to chat afterwards. But we will stop let everybody go if you have lunch, dinner appointments or nightclub appointments. I don't know what you do.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. And thank you, Phra Pandit, for teaching us and setting maybe some things right. Next week we'll have the Dhamma Circle. Arti will be facilitating that, where we will continue our reading of the book by Walpola Rahula, What the Buddha Thought, where we have meditation. So if you want to know more about what he said, about what the Buddha said about meditation, please join us next week. And as always, a couple of practical things. It would be really nice if you would help us cleaning out the room. The brown seats go to the balcony and the white seats go behind the curtain in the hall. And in the hall you'll also find two donation boxes. One is for Phra Pandit and the other one is for Banari.
No.
The one for Phra Pandit,
Okay.
as you know, we're always for free. We just recommend, show some gratitude and practice generosity by donating some money. In this case, we would really appreciate it even more because as Little Bank we have some costs to make. We have to pay for our meetup, we have to pay for our website, and so it would be really helpful. And Phra Pandit said what we donate to Phra Pandit today will go to meeting those costs. So please be generous.
So it goes into the kitty to cover the expenses for the group,
Right.
which we rarely ask for, but this year we do have a domain name and meetup and a couple of things. But anyway.
Combined to that, we also need some physical help. I always ask at the end, can you help cleaning out the room? And you will do, thank you very much for that. But we also have to set up the room. And we have only a very small group of people who do that. Sometimes these people have to work, or they're on holiday, or they're not feeling well. And it would be really helpful if one or more of you would say, well, every once in a while, or ideally every week, I can come half an hour before 5:30 and help setting up the room. If you are interested in doing that, please approach me or Best or Tom, and then we can note your name and add you to the support group. Okay, thank you all very much, and Phra Pandit, maybe you can end with the blessing.
Sabitiyo vivajantu sambarogo vinasatu mate bhavat vantarayo sukhiti kayuko bhava abhiva dhanasili sanicang vuddha pachayino chataro dhamma vadanti ayuvano sukhang balang. So I'll see you next year.
Yes, some of us will go to nearby restaurants and continue the conversation. Everyone is invited, though, on a maybe not like this, I can't promise anything.
Well, I still going to be on setting up the retreat centre. Yeah. Thursday, next Thursday, I have a sort of week coming to Vietnam. So, and then end of December, I have my the guy who put me up in Canada. He's coming to Bangkok, so I'm gonna. So I'll be backwards and forwards, but
So I'll text you so you can get back to me. One of those videos to do it.
yeah, usually
If you're around.
it's a Tuesday because I'm here on a Monday. And that's kind of like a really good day.